The encounter, it was a cold, silent night in the city of New York. The kind of night that made the streets feel empty, even though they were full of people. The neon lights from the shops flickered, casting strange shadows on the alleyways. The busy sounds of the city seemed to fade into the background as Alex walked home from a late shift at the garage. He was used to these walks, the long, tiring nights of fixing cars for people who barely looked at him. But tonight, something was different. As Alex made his way down the alley, his boots crunching against the scattered trash and broken glass, he heard a faint noise. At first, he thought it was just the wind, or maybe a stray animal digging through the garbage. But then he heard it again, a soft, almost pitiful sound. Alex stopped and listened, his curiosity getting the better of him. The alley was dark, lit only by the distant glow of street lamps. He peered into the shadows, trying to make out what was making the noise. At first, he saw nothing but piles of trash and cardboard boxes. But then, just behind a pile of old rotting food, he saw a small figure hunched over. It was a girl. Alex took a step closer, his heart pounding in his chest. He had seen homeless people before, but this was different. The girl wasn't just sitting or lying there like others who lived on the streets. She was eating. She had her back turned to him, but her movements were slow and careful as she picked through the trash, pulling out bits of food. The way she ate reminded him of a dog searching for scraps, but something about her wasn't right. There was an aura around her, something that didn't fit with the roughness of the alley. She wasn't just any homeless girl. She was different. Alex hesitated for a moment. He had lived in the city his whole life and had learned to ignore the pain and suffering of others. It was easier that way. But tonight, it felt impossible to look away from this girl. There was something in her eyes, something that tugged at his heart. He stepped closer. "Hey," Alex called out gently. The girl froze. For a long moment, she didn't move, her head slightly turned toward him. Alex couldn't see her face clearly, but he could sense her fear. "I'm not going to hurt you," Alex said, his voice soft and steady. He took another step closer, his eyes scanning the alley for any signs of danger. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay." The girl didn't respond. She was still, too still. For a moment, Alex wondered if she even understood him. But then, slowly, she turned her head. What Alex saw nearly stopped his heart. Her face was pale, almost glowing. In the dim light, she had large, dark eyes, so dark they seemed to suck in the surrounding light. Her hair was a strange mix of silver and blue, flowing in long, tangled strands down her back. Her clothes were torn, dirty, and barely clinging to her thin frame. But it wasn't just the way she looked that caught Alex's attention. It was the way she carried herself, even in such a vulnerable state. There was a quiet strength in her eyes, a sense of nobility that didn't belong in the alley. Without a word, the girl looked down at the scraps of food in her hands and then back at Alex. She didn't smile, didn't seem to react at all. Instead, she dropped the food back into the pile and stood up. Alex's breath caught in his throat. The girl was shorter than him, but there was something regal in her posture. She was delicate, yet there was a sense of power in the way she stood. Despite her disheveled appearance, she seemed out of place here, like she didn't belong among the trash and the dirt. Alex couldn't explain why, but he knew he couldn't leave her there. There was something about her, something that told him she wasn't just a random person to be ignored. "Are you lost?" Alex asked, his voice a little shaky now. The girl didn't speak, but her eyes seemed to tell him everything. She was more than she appeared. He wasn't sure what it was. Maybe it was the way she looked at him, or maybe it was the way she carried herself, but Alex knew he had to do something. Without thinking, he pulled a sandwich from his jacket pocket. "Here," he said, holding it out to her. "You look hungry." The girl hesitated, staring at the sandwich as if it were something foreign. Alex felt a pang of guilt. Maybe she didn't eat human food. He took a step back, trying to give her Space, but his eyes never left her. You can have it. I don't want it. Slowly, the girl reached out, her fingers brushing the sandwich. She didn't take it right away, but she didn't pull her hand back either. Alex waited, giving her the time she needed. Then, to his surprise, the girl grabbed the sandwich and took a small bite. She chewed carefully, her eyes still fixed on him. She didn't speak, but there was something about the way she looked at him, something that felt almost grateful. Alex watched her for a long moment, his heart heavy with something he couldn't quite explain. He knew this encounter wasn't a coincidence. He didn't know who she was, or what she was doing here, but he had a feeling this moment would change everything. As the girl finished the sandwich, she looked up at him, her gaze intense and unwavering. For the first time she spoke, her voice soft but clear. "Thank you," she whispered. Alex's heart skipped a beat. Those two simple words, spoken in the softest of voices, made him feel something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. He didn't know what the future held for her or for him, but he knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning, and somehow he couldn't walk away now. The connection, the next few days felt strange to Alex. He kept thinking about the girl. Her large dark eyes, her silent grace, and the way she had eaten the sandwich with such care. It wasn't just her appearance that had stuck with him. It was something deeper. There was a sadness in her eyes, but also something fierce, something that didn't belong to the homeless girl he had found in the alley. She wasn't like the others. Every night after work, Alex found himself walking the same route to the alley, hoping he would find her again. He didn't know why he felt this pull toward her. Maybe it was because he had never seen anyone like her before. Maybe it was because she was alone, like him in some ways, both of them living in a world that didn't care about them. It had been 3 days since they met, and Alex hadn't seen her. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was failing her somehow. Maybe she had left, maybe she didn't want anything to do with him. He had no way of knowing. The city was big, and people like her often disappeared. But tonight, as Alex turned the corner into the alley, his eyes caught a familiar figure huddled near the same trash pile. There she was, the girl. She was sitting on the ground, her back pressed against the cold, cracked wall. She looked smaller than before, as if the weight of the world had become too much for her. Her head was down, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. Alex hesitated for a moment, watching her in silence. There was something about the way she sat so still, so quiet, that made his heart ache. He took a step forward, clearing his throat. "Hey," he said softly. The girl looked up, her eyes locking with his. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then, without a word, she stood up, her movements slow and uncertain. Alex felt a pang of worry. "Are you okay?" he asked. Taking a cautious step closer, the girl didn't speak, but her eyes seemed to tell him everything. She was struggling, that much was clear. Alex could see the exhaustion on her face, the way her shoulders slumped under the weight of something she was carrying. It wasn't just physical, it was something deeper, something Alex couldn't name. He didn't know what else to say. So instead of speaking, he pulled out a sandwich from his jacket, the same one he had given her the other night. "Here," he said, holding it out toward her. "I brought you something to eat." The girl hesitated for a moment, eyeing the sandwich as if it were something dangerous. But then, slowly, she reached out and took it from his hand. Alex watched her as she took a small bite. There was something mesmerizing about the way she ate. It wasn't like the way humans ate quickly, without much thought. The girl took her time, savoring every bite, as though the food was something precious. As she ate, Alex sat down next to her, close enough to be near, but far enough to give her space. The air between them was thick with unspoken words. Alex didn't know what to say. He wasn't sure if she understood him, or if she even wanted to. But he couldn't just leave her there, alone, eating scraps out of a trash pile. "I don't know who you are. Alex said after a long silence. "But I can't just walk away. There's something about you. Something that doesn't feel right. You shouldn't be here. You deserve more than this." The girl looked up at him, her dark eyes locked onto his. She didn't speak, but her gaze was enough. Alex felt a rush of emotions, empathy, confusion, and something he couldn't quite place. There was a sadness in her eyes that made his heart ache. She had been through something terrible, and Alex felt a deep, burning need to protect her, to help her find peace. The girl finished the sandwich, but she didn't look away from him. She seemed to be studying him as if she was trying to understand something about him, just as he was trying to understand her. Alex could feel the weight of her gaze, and for the first time, he realized that this wasn't just a random encounter. "There's more to you than I can see, isn't there?" Alex said quietly. "You're not just some homeless girl. You're something else." The girl didn't answer, but Alex saw a flicker of something in her eyes, a spark of recognition, as if she understood what he was saying. She raised her hand slowly, pointing at the pendant around her neck. "Alex." Their best efforts, the footsteps grew louder, closer. They were being hunted. Suddenly, a group of figures emerged from the shadows, their forms barely visible in the dim light. Alex's heart pounded as he drew the knife, but before he could move, the girl stepped in front of him, her body glowing with a faint, ethereal light. Her eyes burned with power, and the men froze in their tracks. "You're too late," the girl said, her voice clear and strong. "I won't let you take me." The men hesitated, their eyes darting nervously between each other. They had expected to find a frightened girl, weak and vulnerable. But they had underestimated her. She wasn't afraid. She was ready to fight. One of the men took a step forward, his hand reaching for a weapon. But before he could draw it, the girl raised her hand, and a wave of energy shot out from her, knocking him back with a force that sent him crashing into a tree. The other men stared in shock, realizing they were no longer facing an easy target. They were facing someone who could fight back. The girl's power was undeniable, and Alex saw the fear in their eyes. They weren't ready for this. They hadn't prepared for her to be this strong. "Run!" Alex shouted, grabbing the girl's arm and pulling her away from the men. They didn't hesitate. Together, they ran deeper into the forest, the sound of footsteps growing fainter behind them. They didn't know where they were going, but they knew they had to keep moving as they ran. Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. They had fought back. They had won this battle, but there was still a long way to go. The enemies were still out there, and they would keep coming. But for now, Alex knew one thing for sure. They were stronger than they had been before. And together, they could face whatever came next. Hadn't noticed it before, but now that he saw it, he realized it wasn't just a simple piece of jewelry. The pendant had a faint, glowing light to it, almost like it was alive. Alex's breath caught in his throat. He didn't know why, but something about the pendant felt important, like it held a secret. He reached out cautiously, almost without thinking, and gently touched the pendant. The moment his fingers made contact, a wave of energy seemed to pulse through him. It wasn't anything physical, but it was enough to make him pull his hand back in surprise. The girl looked at him, her expression unreadable. She didn't speak, but Alex felt a deep sense of unease. He didn't know what was happening, but he knew it wasn't just a coincidence. "Where are you from?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The girl looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. Then, as if she had made a decision, she reached out and placed her hand on his chest. Alex felt a warmth spread through him, not from her hand, but from the connection between them. It was as if she was giving him a piece of herself, a glimpse into a world he could never understand. "I'm not like you," she whispered. "I'm something else." Alex's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know what she meant, but he knew he had to find out. He couldn't leave her here, not now, not when he felt this strange connection. "You're not alone," Alex said firmly. "I'll help you, whatever it is. I'll help you find your way." The girl looked at him, her eyes softening just a little. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Alex knew then that their lives were about to change forever. They were connected in a way that went beyond anything he could explain. And somehow he knew this was only the beginning. The girl stood up, her eyes still locked on his. Without a word, she extended her hand. Alex took it, feeling a rush of warmth spread through him. And for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel alone. The truth unfolds. Alex could hardly believe what was happening. Just a few days ago, the girl had been nothing more than a stranger scavenging for food in an alley, and now, standing before him, she felt like something out of a dream. He wasn't sure who she was, or where she had come from. But one thing was clear. There was a mystery surrounding her, and Alex couldn't ignore it. After she took his hand, he felt a connection, something deeper than he had ever felt before. The warmth from her touch seemed to settle in his chest, and for the first time in years, he felt like he was part of something bigger. But even as they stood there, the quiet hum of the city surrounding them, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that there was something he wasn't being told. The girl wasn't just a lost soul. She was hiding something. He could feel it. She had been silent for most of their interactions, only speaking the 2 words of thanks when he had given her food. But now, as they stood facing each other in the dim alley, she seemed to be gathering her thoughts, as though weighing the decision to finally open up. Alex waited, his heart racing, wondering what she would say without letting go of his hand. The girl stepped back slightly, her eyes never leaving his. She seemed to be deep in thought, struggling with something inside her. It was as if she wanted to speak, but something was holding her back. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and filled with an unspoken sadness. "I'm not from here," she said, her words careful. "I don't belong on Earth." Alex's brow furrowed. "What do you mean? Where are you from?" The girl hesitated for a long moment before responding, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm from a place far away," she said, her eyes distant as if remembering a time long gone. "My people, my family, we are not like the humans here. We come from a world of light and power, a world of honor and strength. I was born to be a leader, to guide my people, but I failed." The weight of her words hit Alex like a wave. She wasn't just some lost alien, she was royalty, a leader from another world, a princess. But what had happened to her? Why was she here, hiding in the streets? Failed? Alex asked, his voice filled with confusion. "What happened? How did you end up here?" The girl looked down at the ground, her hand tightening around Alex's, as if seeking comfort in his presence. Her voice was thick with emotion when she spoke again. "I was exiled," she said, her eyes filled with pain. "My people turned against me. They believed I was weak, unworthy of leading them. I was betrayed by those I trusted the most." She took a shaky breath before continuing. "I was sent to Earth, left to die. I was nothing more than a prisoner in a strange world with no one to turn to." Alex's heart broke for her. He couldn't imagine the pain she must have gone through. To be cast aside, abandoned by her own people, to live in a world where no one understood her. It was too much for anyone to bear. "But why Earth?" Alex asked, trying to understand. "Why this planet?" The girl's eyes flickered with something Alex couldn't quite place. "Earth is a place of power," she said. "A place where even the weakest can survive. But it's also a place of great danger. My people knew that if I were sent here, I would either die or survive, and if I survived, I would become stronger. They believed the humans were too weak to ever pose a threat to me, that I would be left to fend for myself until I became a shadow of who I once was." Alex's mind was racing. He couldn't comprehend everything she was saying, but the pieces were starting to fall into place. She wasn't just a lost alien. She was a powerful being, sent to Earth as a test, a punishment, a way to break her. But what did that mean for him? Why had he become involved in her fate? "I don't understand," Alex said softly, his voice full of confusion and empathy. "Why me? Why did you come to me? I'm just a mechanic. I'm not part of your world." The girl looked up at him, her dark eyes filled with a strange mix of sadness and gratitude. "I didn't choose you," she said quietly, "but you chose me. You saw me. You didn't turn away. And that's something no one else has done." Alex didn't know what to say. The weight of her words hit him harder than he expected. He had never seen himself as a hero, never imagined he could be part of something so much bigger than himself. Yet here he was, standing in the alley, holding the hand of an alien princess, a girl who had been cast aside by her own people. But what happens now? Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do you want from me?" The girl hesitated before answering, her eyes searching his face for something. "I don't want anything from you," she said, her voice firm. "But I need your help. I need someone I can trust. The people who sent me here, the ones who betrayed me, they are coming for me. They won't stop until they have me, and when they find me, they will destroy everything." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He hadn't imagined that the girl's troubles were so dangerous. She wasn't just running from her past. She was running from something much more terrifying. Something that would stop at nothing to reclaim her. "Who are they?" Alex asked, his voice filled with fear. "What do they want from you?" "They want control," the girl replied, her voice dark with warning. "They want to use me as a weapon, to conquer worlds, to bend others to their will. They will stop at nothing to get me back." The gravity of her words hit Alex hard. The girl wasn't just a runaway princess, she was a target. And if her enemies were as powerful as she said, then Alex's life was about to change forever. But despite the fear creeping into his chest, Alex didn't hesitate. He couldn't leave her now. There was no turning back. "I won't let them take you," Alex said, his voice filled with determination. "I don't know what's happening, but I won't let them hurt you." The girl's eyes softened, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're the first human to ever believe in me." Alex nodded, gripping her hand a little tighter. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know how he could help her or what dangers lay ahead. But one thing was clear, he wasn't walking away from this. Whatever happened, he was going to fight for her, just as she had fought for her survival. And together, they would face whatever came next. The pursuit, the days following their conversation, were filled with a strange, growing tension. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that danger was closer than ever. The girl, he still didn't know her name, had shared the truth about who she was and where she came from. But that only made things more complicated. There was more to her than he could understand, and as much as he wanted to help, he wasn't sure how. The enemies she spoke of were no ordinary people. They were powerful, and they would stop at nothing to capture her. Alex had always considered himself an ordinary man. He worked at a garage, fixing cars for a living, and lived a quiet life. But now he was caught up in something he couldn't control, something bigger than himself. And as the girl's words echoed in his mind, he realized that whatever came next, he was already too deep in it to turn back. The girl had told him they were coming for her. She had said it calmly, as if she expected it. But Alex couldn't ignore the fear he saw in her eyes. He had never seen her like that before. She had always been so quiet, so strong. But now, with every passing day, her fear seemed to grow. It wasn't just the threat of being found, it was something deeper, something that weighed heavily on her. And it wasn't just her fear that concerned Alex. He had seen the look in her eyes when she spoke of her people. They had exiled her, cast her aside, and now they were hunting her down. The very people she was born to lead had turned against her, And now, they wanted to destroy everything she held dear. Alex couldn't even begin to imagine the kind of pain that would cause. He had tried to ask her more questions, to understand her better, but every time he did, she seemed to retreat into herself. She would give him small answers, but never enough to satisfy his curiosity. He could sense her reluctance to talk about her past, about the life she had lost. She didn't want to burden him with her pain, but Alex couldn't ignore it. He had already made the choice to help her, and he wasn't going to back out now. One night, as Alex walked home from the garage, he saw something that made his heart stop. There, in the alley where he had first found her, a group of men were standing. They were dressed in dark, nondescript clothing, their faces hidden in the shadows. Alex froze, watching them from a distance. He recognized the look in their eyes. They were searching for someone. And that someone was the girl. His heart pounded in his chest as he ducked behind a dumpster, his breath shallow and fast. He didn't know who these people were, but they were dangerous. He had to warn her. He had to get to her before they did. Without thinking, he ran down the alley, keeping to the shadows, careful not to make a sound. He didn't know how far they had gone, but he had to catch up to them. He had to find her before it was too late. As he turned the corner, he saw her. The girl was standing in the middle of the street, her back to the men, unaware that they were closing in on her. Alex's heart skipped a beat as he saw the panic in her eyes. She was scared, but she was trying to stay calm, trying not to let them see how vulnerable she really was. "Hey!" Alex shouted, his voice cutting through the stillness of the night. The girl whipped around, her eyes wide with surprise. But before she could react, the men lunged toward her. Alex felt a rush of adrenaline flood through his body as he rushed toward them, not thinking about the danger. He couldn't let them take her. "Get away from her!" Alex shouted, shoving one of the men out of his way. The man stumbled but quickly regained his balance, glaring at Alex. "Stay out of this, human," he snarled. "This doesn't concern you." But Alex wasn't listening. He wasn't going to let them hurt her. He had already made up his mind. He would protect her no matter what. He lunged at another man, pushing him away from the girl. But as he did, he felt a sharp pain in his side, and he stumbled back, gasping for air. The girl moved in front of him, her body tensing as she faced the men. "Leave him alone," she said, her voice steady but filled with an unspoken power. The air around her seemed to crackle, and for the first time, Alex saw the true strength she had been hiding. The men hesitated, looking at each other as if they were unsure what to do. It was clear that they weren't expecting her to stand up for herself. They had underestimated her. But Alex saw it now, the quiet, untapped power that had been lurking beneath the surface all along. "Stay back," the girl warned, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "I will not let you take me." The men backed away, their expressions now filled with fear. They didn't know who she was, but they knew enough to know that she wasn't just some helpless girl. There was something dangerous about her, something that made them rethink their mission. But before they could retreat entirely, one of them pulled out a weapon. A small, sleek gun that hummed with energy. Alex's heart skipped a beat. He knew they weren't going to back down so easily. "Get down!" Alex shouted, grabbing the girl's arm and pulling her to the ground. The gun fired, a sharp electric crack filling the air as it sent a burst of energy toward them. Alex felt the shockwave hit him, knocking the wind out of him, but he managed to shield the girl with his body. She cried out, but the shot had missed them. "Run!" Alex shouted, scrambling to his feet. The girl hesitated for a moment, her eyes scanning the alley as if calculating their next move. But then, with a sudden burst of speed, she grabbed Alex's hand and pulled him toward the street. They ran together, dodging through the alleys, hearing the men's footsteps behind them. Alex's heart raced in his chest as they turned corners, sprinting through the dark streets. They didn't know where they were going, but they had to get away. The girl was right. Her enemies wouldn't stop until they had her. And now, they knew they weren't just dealing with a scared, helpless girl. They were dealing with a princess, a leader, and a weapon. Alex didn't know how long they ran, but when they finally stopped, breathless and exhausted, they found themselves at the edge of the city. The streets were quieter here, darker. But Alex knew they couldn't stay long. The men would keep searching for them. "We can't stop here," Alex said, his voice strained. "They'll find us." The girl nodded, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "We have to keep moving. We can't let them catch us." And so they ran. Together, side by side, with nothing but the night ahead of them. The pursuit had begun, and there was no turning back. The conclusion: the night was cold, and the streets stretched out before them, dark and empty. Alex and the girl had been running for hours, never looking back, always pushing forward. The city had faded behind them, and now they were on the outskirts, near the edge of the forest where the lights from the city no longer reached. The only sounds were their heavy breaths and the distant rustle of the trees. They stopped to catch their breath. Alex's legs were burning from the running, his chest aching with every breath he took. He looked over at the girl, who was standing a few feet away, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Despite everything that had happened, there was a calmness about her, a quiet strength that Alex couldn't quite understand. "You okay?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The girl nodded, though she still seemed distant, lost in her thoughts. She wasn't like other people Alex had met. She wasn't just scared of her enemies. She was afraid of something much bigger, something that went beyond the danger they were in. He could see it in her eyes, a weight she had been carrying for far too long. "We need to keep moving," the girl said, her voice soft but firm. "They won't stop looking for us." Alex didn't argue. He knew she was right. They had to get away. But where would they go? They couldn't run forever. He was just one man, and she was just one girl, even if she was a princess from another world. Together, they were no match for the people who were hunting her. "How long can we keep running?" Alex asked, his voice filled with frustration. The girl turned to face him, her dark eyes meeting his. "As long as it takes," she said quietly. "I can't go back. I won't let them control me again." Alex felt a pang of sympathy for her. He couldn't imagine what she had been through. The betrayal of her own people, the fear of being hunted down, it was too much for anyone to bear. But there was something about her, something that made him want to protect her, to make sure she was safe, even if he didn't know how. They kept moving, walking through the quiet forest, the trees towering above them like silent guardians. Alex could feel the tension between them, a weight that neither of them could shake. They didn't speak much as they walked, each lost in their own thoughts. Alex couldn't help but wonder what her life had been like before everything had gone wrong. What had she been like before she had been exiled, betrayed, and sent to Earth? "I never wanted this," the girl said suddenly, breaking the silence. "I never wanted to leave my home. I didn't ask for any of this." Alex looked at her, his heart aching. He could see the pain in her eyes, the sadness that she had carried with her all this time. He wanted to say something to make her feel better, to take away the weight of the world she was carrying, but he didn't know how. He wasn't equipped to fix what was broken inside her. All he could do was stay by her side and protect her the best way he knew how. "You don't have to do this alone," Alex said, his voice quiet but firm. "I'm here for you. We'll figure this out together." The girl looked at him, her eyes softening for a moment. She didn't say anything, but Alex saw the smallest flicker of gratitude in her gaze. It was enough for him to know that he wasn't alone in this fight. They were in this together. As they continued through the woods, they heard the sound of footsteps behind them, slow but steady. Someone was following them. Alex's heart skipped a beat, and his hand instinctively reached for the small knife he kept in his pocket. He turned to look at the girl, who was already standing tall, her posture tense. her eyes scanning the trees. "They're here," she whispered, her voice low and steady. Alex's grip tightened on the knife as he scanned the area. He didn't know how many people were out there, but he knew they couldn't afford to let their guard down. He had to protect her. "No matter what, stay close to me," Alex said, his voice hardening with determination. The girl nodded, but there was no fear in her eyes. She had faced danger before, and she was ready to face it again. The men who had been chasing them wouldn't give up easily. But neither would they. They moved through the forest in silence, their footsteps muffled by the thick underbrush. The night seemed to close in around them, the darkness pressing down, making it harder to breathe. Alex's senses were on high alert, every sound amplified in the stillness. The sound of a twig snapping underfoot made him flinch, his heart racing. But it was only a deer, bounding off into the night. They kept moving, pushing forward, knowing they had to stay ahead of their pursuers. But despite